Everyone keeps saying Battlefield is dying, and I honestly don't think that's true at all. I think what's actually happening is being misunderstood, because the game didn't suddenly fail. It just moved out of its launch hype phase, and once you understand how modern games work, especially live service games like Battlefield, the whole dead game argument doesn't really hold up. Another thing people forget about launch numbers is that a lot of players were never going to stick around anyway. Some people jump in for the hype, play a few matches, maybe try out the campaign, then move on to the next big release. That doesn't mean the game failed, it just means not everyone was meant to be a long-term player. That's normal. It happens with almost every big release. Right now, Battlefield is still pulling through roughly 30 to 40,000 players every day on Steam alone. Because Steam is only one platform, Battlefield is being played on PlayStation, Xbox and the EA app, and a lot of people don't use Steam at all. And when you add all those together, the real number of people playing Battlefield daily is much higher than what Steam charts show. Steam numbers don't tell the full story, they never have. If Battlefield were actually dying, you wouldn't see this level of daily activity across multiple platforms. The real problem with Battlefield right now isn't player numbers, it's content. And to be more accurate, it's the lack of maps. At the moment, there are around 10 maps in total. For a Battlefield game, that just isn't enough. Battlefield has always heavily relied on different types of environments, different layouts, different ways matches can play out. When the map pool is small, people naturally burn out quicker, even if they're still enjoying the core gameplay. That's why players dip in and out, not because the game is bad, but because there isn't enough new content to keep things feeling fresh week after week. Battlefield has always felt better once the map pool grows. Even older Battlefield games didn't feel complete until they had way more maps. This is also why numbers go up and down so much. Whether a new map, update drops, players return, numbers spike, people check out, play for a bit, then things settle down again. The cycle is completely normal for live service games. People treat dips like this as proof a game is dying. But a dead game doesn't spike at all. A dead game doesn't keep tens of thousands of players constantly. Battlefield still does both. I also think social media plays a big role in how people see games now. Once the narrative becomes, this game is dead, people repeat it without really questioning it. The louder voices online don't always represent the majority of the players who are actually logging in and playing. It becomes easy to focus on charts and numbers than it is just to sit down and enjoy the game. And I honestly think the most important part people forget, if you're still having fun playing Battlefield, then the player numbers don't really matter that much. You don't need millions of players for a game to be enjoyable. As long as you're finding matches, having good moments, enjoying your time with the game, that's what matters. Another thing that's changed is how players interact with games. Battlefield used to be a game you played constantly. Now it's more of a game people rotate back to, or when they're in the mood for large scale chaotics that other shooters just don't offer. That doesn't mean Battlefield has lost its identity. The sandbox is still there, the moments are still there, the unpredictability of the situations, the scale, the feel that anything could happen in a match, all of that still exists. Will Battlefield hit its original launch numbers again? Probably not. And that's completely fine. Very few games ever do. Launch numbers are an exception, not the standard. But could the player base climb again with consistent updates and new maps? Absolutely. When the new content drops, numbers go up. When updates slow down, numbers settle again. And hopefully, when new maps get announced and released, that will give players a reason to jump back in and push those numbers up again. Right now, Battlefield feels like it's in a quiet period, not a dying one. It's waiting on content, not on players. The interest is still there. The foundation is still there. What is missing is a steady flow of new maps and updates to keep people engaged long term. So when people say Battlefield is dead, I don't agree. What we're really seeing is a game that's moved past its launch hype, settled into its long term phase. The player base is smaller than it was at launch, yes, but it's still active, still healthy, still very much alive. The real question isn't whether Battlefield is dying, the real question is whether it's being supported well enough to reach its full potential.